people that casually look at open source free software and think, well, because you're supposed to share and do it for people's goodwill, doesn't that seem somewhat communist? What's your response?
Absolute nonsense. It makes me really angry when people do that.
Well, back in 1989, actually, communism would have been a compliment. The word that people were using at that time was crazy. I wanted them to use capitalism.
Communism is an ideology that forces people to share. If you don't share, you get thrown in jail or killed.
In 1990, we got a visit from a director of an institute in Moscow University. And actually, I saw him in Helsinki just 2 weeks ago. But in any event, he came by, and Richard Stallman had suggested that he visit Cygnus because he was interested in understanding how the free software model might apply to stimulating entrepreneurial innovation in Russia, of all places. And we had been kind of secretive about our business plan because we weren't really sure that it was going to work, and we didn't want to look too stupid if it failed. But I was very, very open with him, and the more I told him, the more he started shaking his head like this. And I finally said, what's wrong? And he said, this sounds too much like communism to be successful in Russia.
You go to a gulag and end up in a mass grave with a bullet in the back of your head. Open source is not communism because it doesn't force people.
Karl Marx did not invent helping your neighbor. It's not communist to have a commons. A commons existed long before communism as a philosophy of government. There are many commons in our lives. For example, we drive on the highway, something that is maintained for our common good.
Actually, labeling our business model means that it misses the point a little bit. Whether it's communist or whether it's capitalist, the label doesn't matter. The real question is, how much value can you deliver? How scalable is the business? What kind of problems, what kind of rate of innovation can you sustain? And then however you want to label that is really up to you.
A lot of people described that August Linux World as Linux's coming out party. Linus Torvalds was very funny about that. He said, "What, was Linux gay?" But some people said, "Yeah, that was our debutante ball. That was when the Linux guys, the hardcore hackers, really got it together with the suits."
At 3 p.m. on August 10th, 1999, Linus Torvalds delivered the keynote address at Linux World. The crowd of 6,000 people began lining up at 12 noon.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Larry Augustine, Linux World Conference Chair and President and CEO, VA Linux Systems.
These guys have to clap. I pay them. Thank you all for being here. Looks like it's been a great show so far. If you'll indulge me for a moment, I'm going to try and avoid the glare of the lights and just I still think there's a lot of people, even though this is the second show, I still think there's a lot of people who don't quite get what it is that's so exciting about Linux. There's this great show going on next door. There's huge exhibits and everything, but it's the people out here that are the real contributors, not those companies. The person on next, I know you all know, so I don't have to give anything in the way of introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Linus Torvalds. Linus.
Calm down. calm down. Say, ooh. Yes. I don't want to just give one of my normal talks because I find them boring. Probably by now most of you find them boring too because you've heard them like 10 times. But after the technical update, we'll actually try whether we can do a questions and answers session with 5,000 people or how many of you there are there. And it may not actually work out because one of the 5,000 people is really loud. The one thing I will do, which I always do in all my talks, is the gratitude thing. I want to kind of acknowledge the fact that I've obviously not been alone in doing Linux.
Red Hat up 228%. This is the IPO that everybody was waiting for. They, of course, are behind the Linux operating software.
RHAT. I know what it is. All I've gotten today are comments about what the stock price is all morning. You know, it was at 41, it was at 42, it was at 47, it was at 53, it was at 51. Every machine, as far as I can tell, on the show floor is pointed to their E-Trade accounts, to their broker accounts. They know the Red Hat price.
I can't believe it. 46. I
just heard 53.
Oh, boy. Hang on. I didn't buy any.
You didn't buy?
No, I didn't buy. I should have bought. But, no, that's great if it's that.
You guys don't know? Well, you know, Red Hat being successful just means that it legitimizes Linux, so it's much easier for us to go out.
And our made for digital homoerotic adventure game. The government's confiscated that one.
Yeah. It's kind of been a little bit divided. You've got a lot of people that are pretty hardcore, and they're kind of offended by that, you know, because they've worked really hard and they're not really getting maybe their fair share out of that. Some people do get ticked, and you know the thing that you see that on a lot of mailing lists or on Slashdot. You know, you read this guy is really mad because he didn't get a chance to didn't get a chance to get stock from Red Hat. He didn't get a chance to get a job from this other company. You know, but the kind of the shocking secret there is that most of the really hardcore guys, you know, they don't care so much. The guys that are kind of really down in the trenches, they're writing this code because they need this code.
If we could invite Richard Stallman, who's the founder of the Free Software Association, and Tim Ney, who's the managing director. There we go.
Here it is.
Richard, I saw you playing your recorder in Paris at that Linux conference, but I didn't have an audio track. So would you get them to add audio to their video downstream next time?
I don't have any control over that. Unfortunately, those things can only be done with non-free software.
Okay. All right. We'll give you the award. And before you say a word, we'll have Tim and yourself hold up a little representation of the contribution towards the Free Software Association.
So, very ironic things have happened, but nothing to match this. Giving the Linus Torvalds Award to the Free Software Foundation is sort of like giving the Han Solo Award to the Rebel Fleet. You see, some of you may not realize how far that analogy goes. But actually, let me tell you how we got here. See, what happened is, 15 years ago, if you wanted to use a computer, the only way you could do it was with proprietary software that divides and subjugates the users. And most people a lot of people didn't like it, but they saw no alternative. But some of us were determined to make an alternative, and we said we're going to develop a free operating system, a free software operating system that will give users the chance to have freedom while they use their computers. Now, a lot of people said, well, it's a nice idea, but it's so hard, and we'll never get it done, so I don't want to participate. I don't believe you can ever get it done. But luckily, not everybody said that. And clearly, we knew we would eventually get the kernel done. But as it happens, somebody else did a better kernel before we did. Now, in the old days, We had an overall strategy for calling people's attention to the importance of freedom, to the freedom that they can have or not have when they use a computer. Well, what can we do about it? As far as I can tell, the only workable way of trying to change this and make that strategy work again is to spread the word that the operating system you're using is actually the GNU system, somewhat modified, of course. And when people know this, they'll take a look at the reasons we developed this system, they'll think about these issues, and